Welcome to this evening's session, Capital Ideas for London Streets. It says a street party. I don't know if we're going to dance later, but maybe we are. My name's Esther Kurland. I'm from Urban Design London. I was invited to come and chair this evening's session. This is part of a programme of events supporting the Streets Ahead exhibition, which I'm sure you've had a look at as you've been going round. The idea this evening is to get a quick overview of some very interesting ideas, some new and novel concepts to inspire us about what our streets can be like in the future. New London Architecture's brought together some industry experts to look at the future of London streets and roads, and we're calling it Capital Ideas. We've got 20 seconds for 20 slides for each of the speakers. You all know what I'm going to try and say it. PechaKucha? Is that right? I always get it wrong. And we're going to have some drinks and talks in the discussion and conversation in the middle of the session. Right, without further ado, our first talk is by Fred Pilbrow. And it says down here that Fred from Pilbrow and Partners is going to talk about arcades within and through buildings, but he actually tells me he's going to talk about goats and urban design, which is intriguing me. So, Fred, over to you.
Thanks very much. Now, to say I'm nervous would be an understatement, because I'm a PechaKucha virgin, and it may all go horribly wrong. You see, I'm going to glance this way to see how I'm behind slides. But it is true that TfL probably don't employ goats as much as they should. I'm on my first slide and we're off. But Picanionis, the wonderful Athenian architect, used to work out desire lines in cities by putting buckets of paint underneath goats and seeing how they negotiated the topography to see what was the best balance between steepness and convenience. Whether it's a good methodology, I'm not sure, but I'm struck that much of our work in London has been about facilitating movement and releasing movement where its potential has been blocked. Sometimes the blocks, I guess, are political, and you see the enormous potential of spaces that get reconnected that were hitherto divorced by things like the Berlin Wall. And sometimes the blocks are infrastructure or industry. I think Terry Farrell had a wonderful phrase about Countess Creek, that it had been a bad river in London's terminology. It's where industry agglomerated. And right up on the north with Imperial, I was involved with Imperial West, which is their new campus in White City. And one of the things that we wanted to do was forge links back across the infrastructure that had divided it, a connection under the West London line. And it took a degree of faith, because actually it's not an environment where you'd go today. Because there's no movement, there's no activity. We have on the left the Westway, on the right the base of our building, and we invested a lot in making that space a welcoming space. Further down the tracks, and right now we're working with Capco in Earls Court, looking at the exhibition centre, and here the connections are made not under the West London line, but over the top of it. And we're essentially establishing a new ground that will link, on the right of this slide, RBKC, with Hammersmith and Fulham on the left, and it will make connections that once they're there will seem obvious and seem natural, but right now are divorced by the exhibition centre. One aspect of the scheme that I really like is that the urban plan for this new ground that sits atop all the railway infrastructure needs to curve. It's following the turning circles of the trains that define Great Crescents. And so the sweeping Lost River Park in the middle of this image, meeting Emperor's Crescent, coming down to West Brompton Square, which is our little bit of this, will be formed by these wonderful changing vistas as you come across the space. Well, those are all the grand scale urban connections, but we're more modestly, very modestly, sort of down here, just in receipt of planning from Westminster last Tuesday, thank you, for a small site on Curzon Street and Stratton Street. Now, you'll know this if you come late for a meeting in Mayfair and you come out of Green Park Tube, you turn right, you go up Stratton Street, and fuck, that's the one that's blocked by that annoying building at the end. And we worked a lot with Grosvenor, and we were often late, always late for meetings, and this was the thing that really kind of fucked us. And so we had the opportunity, when we were asked to look at Nightingale House, which is the little grey dot on my drawing, this fellow here, to sort that situation out. The building itself was sort of handsome, but had been poorly extended in the 1980s, turned into an office building. And we wanted to explore whether we might make a connection through across the site. And it struck us as we thought about it that actually on the other side, you've got Curzon Street, beyond that, Berkeley Square, and beyond that, Davis Street, and beyond that, Crossrail, where we'd been working on the oversight development for Grosvenor. And if you could link that up with a direct connection, an arcade underneath the site, you potentially had something good going on. Well, we have one expert who we always work with when we're assessing those questions, which is Tim Stoner of Space Syntax. And really, this should be his talk, not mine. Tim and I worked together for the Mercers in Covent Garden, where we were looking at what was it about the quality of those blocks north of Longacre that kind of meant numbers of pedestrians fell off. And Tim said, oh, it's about the browsable block. These 90-metre long frontages are too closed, and if we could make a kind of cross connection, a smaller scale block, we could make a sort of North Floral Street and we get more people moving through. So we said to Tim, we've got this nice site in Mayfair, our hunch is that people might be interested in going down that route, would you come and look at it? Well, this is Tim's spatial integration modelling, and cool colours are few people, and hot colours are lots of people. And actually you see Stratton Street, the little L-shaped blue there, is the quietest of the 12 streets that run north off Piccadilly. Berkeley Street, you can see, is the main pedestrian conduit up into the heart of Mayfair. Well, put an arcade in and everything changes. Stratton Street moves from number 12 to number 2. The flows up Berkeley Square move from being on the east to being on the west, just in time for Grosvenor, who are nicely upgrading all the public realm around there. So this scheme was suddenly transformational in terms of its impact on the surrounding area. I've got to say it had a few challenges for us, because arcades should generally be sort of direct and level, and because of the site, we were curving and rising across the site, and we were only going to be able to activate it on one side. So we had retail over on the west, but on the east we were against the Mayfair Hotel. So we met the Mayfair and we said, look, we want to do this arcade. Would you be interested in coming to play? And they said yes, and so we're going to connect into their restaurant on Stratton Street, and we'll get a double-sided arcade. It also struck me as interesting that there's something about a quality of an arcade, and I guess we were looking at the wonderful precedents around Piccadilly that wants to a degree slow up movement, or you don't want to make it feel too much like a tube. I was trying to think whether I'd be sober enough to say an urban esophagus. You wanted to kind of slow the peristaltic motion through the arcade. So we looked at sort of a Burlington approach where the arcade gets modulated and it has a degree of pace to it as you gently rise and come through the building. And nicely, I think the presence of the arcade on Stratton Street gave us a clue for the way that the new elevation might address Green Park, so that the arcade, and here if 20 seconds was the right amount of time, it would have changed. The arcade would have sat centered on a bay that then looks actually down to Green Park. I can take questions if they're 14 seconds long. I think that's me. Thank you. Oh, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I tell you what, also we can do with 14 seconds is the guys over here who might not be able to see. Do you want to just very quickly shuffle over to that side if you want to have a better view? Yes? No? So a capital idea, have streets which lead to somewhere and are inviting and are direct. Streets for movement, yes? Good idea. What do we think? Good idea? Yeah. Excuse me, do we think it's a good idea? Yay, that's better. Oh, don't shout into a microphone. That's a good idea. Right, Ross Atkins, come and talk to us about clever street furniture and mobility aids.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. Hopefully the first slide will appear and then I'll explain who I am. So I'm an independent designer and but very interested in accessibility in public realm. I'm here to talk to you about responsive street furniture, and this could be called responsive street. In fact, that's what it was called originally, and it could be called responsive infrastructure, and that's my Twitter if anyone wants to tweet along. So this is basically an idea. At the moment it's street furniture, but it could be extended to be all of infrastructure, maybe one day. Right, to explain who I am, what I do, I work on projects that involve at least 2 of these 3 things: digital technology, public space, and older and disabled people. So some of my work's kind of in assistive technology, some of it's in sort of low-tech accessibility research and tactile paving and stuff, and some of it's to do with the smart city. So this project is a collaboration with Marshalls, who make pavement that you know about, and street furniture that fewer people know about, but they make a lot of street furniture. And now, as of very recently, they make intelligent street furniture, which this project is about. Oh, sorry, should be nearer to the mic. Right, so in the course of that low-tech accessibility research, I've done a lot of following disabled people around as they make journeys in public space, and videoing them and analysing the video and trying to report back to people involved in designing.
Them first, yes?
Yeah, they knew I was there designing streets about what they could do differently. So here are some disabled people in Bath from a recent accessibility audit of Bath we did. And one of the things that's very interesting when you start shadowing different disabled people around, because I started off just shadowing people with sight loss, and then eventually I got to shadow other disabled people, is how many trade-offs we're making. This was like research credentials. If you want to read any of the stuff I've written about following disabled people around, and then there are all these papers and reports and things. The Sightline one's quite good if you want to know how to design a street that works well for people with sight loss. Right, the important thing about having done all of this stuff is I realized how often we're making trade-offs between the needs of different disabled people. You might do something that might advantage one group of people, like put in extra seating, which helps this huge group of people who just aren't very mobile and can't get very far without having a rest, but then you restrict footway width for wheelchair and scooter users. So you've helped one group, you've hindered another group. Another good example is level surfaces. So this is the same level surface in Bath. The manual wheelchair users love it. The people with sight loss hate it. I guess you guys knew that already. So the thing about these trade-offs, like the curb one, there's not a lot we can do about. But some of them, we can do something. And bit of a non sequitur, but I did this research project a few years ago about digital technology and accessibility for Scope and PT. And I realized, this is also a report publicly available, read it, it's really useful. What was really interesting about doing that was I realized that in digital, there's a completely different paradigm at work to do accessibility. In the public realm, we're trying to make this awkward compromise between everyone and make one design that fits everyone not very well. In digital, people were creating both devices and websites and apps and things that are adaptable, capable of adapting to the needs of different users. The public realm trade-offs were really, really brought home by this amazing video, which is called Hey, Mr. Boris, which you all have to watch, which is these older people in Kilburn rapping about crossing timings and how they can't cross the road anymore because there isn't enough time. And so I watched that and I thought, actually, this digital adaptability, we can apply this to infrastructure. We have the technology, and we can make infrastructure that adapts to individuals. So we've created this system that does roughly these things and a few other things. But so we're able to recognize whether someone who needs extra time is approaching a crossing and give them extra time. All the other things on that slide. We can do it for different people, different disabled people, other people that just need different experiences, like visitors from another country, because one of the things we can do is give audio information. We're able to give audio information in the language of the person who needs it. So basically, we can create an environment that's adaptable to anyone, whatever they need. This is a sort of system diagram. Basically, people are recognized by the system using a little key fob or their phone. And there's a one-off registration where they say what help they'd like from the system. And then whenever they go putting it past one of these bits of infrastructure that can respond, it does so, and it does something helpful, hopefully. So these are the products we're launching with. We've got a street light that can get brighter for people with low vision. We've got bollard and map totem that can give audio information, many different kinds of audio information to different people. We've got extra places to sit. Here's the registration website on the iPhone of a visually impaired lady. So as I said, it's a one-off registration. You put in the address of your little key fob or your phone, and then from then on, whenever you go past one of these bits of infrastructure, it will do whatever you've asked it to do. This is John. He works for Marshalls, and he's the kind of engineering behind the physical integration. And if you want to install some of these items in your scheme, he's the person to talk to. He's called John Scott. He's brilliant. It's so good working with him. This is our installation at the Design Museum. I thought about trying to get 2 projects into this talk, and I thought I'm only going to have 1, but 20 slides was probably too many. You can see the stuff in the Design Museum. You can play with it. It's working. It's staying up for another few months, I think, until they move. So go and look at that. You know, that you can press a button, you can pretend to be one of the users. And then this is a completely different project that I just wanted to throw in at the end. So I've got some other ideas about how we might make London work better and help disabled people. This is one of them. It's called Sightline. We're about to pilot it with TfL. If you go to my website, you can read about those things, which is going to be the next slide. There you go. This slide used to be much more boring, but I had to change it because it had to be a picture. So now it's a picture with my email, Twitter, and website. So get in touch. Thank you very much for having me.
Very good, Ross. Any installation of the smart furniture on the cards?
We had one out there last year.
Well, if anyone's got a scheme or an area that they think maybe can test out what Ross is talking about and working with Marshalls, then please do get in contact with a strange-looking bird on there. Okay, thank you very much. Is that a capital idea, making bits of street furniture work a bit harder? Internet of everything? Yes? Yeah, well done. Oh, you're getting a bit sad. Right, Nigel Symonds from Camden, going to talk to us about making freight work better.
Good evening, everyone. Apparently freight isn't very sexy, but neither is talking about traffic delays at your dinner party, so hope it will make it fairly interesting.
Do you get invited to dinner parties?
Yeah. So this is a picture of London. It's lovely, isn't it? That's what the effect of air pollution is. So London is one of the most polluted cities in Europe. 4,300 people die a year prematurely from bad air quality. This is a heat map showing the cycle casualties in Camden. I think there was 9 fatalities last year in the whole of London. We obviously, many of you, like myself, are probably cycling, and the number of cyclists is increasing rapidly. I think it's doubled since the 1990s. The congestion charge was introduced in 2003. Unfortunately, levels of congestion have returned to pre-congestion charge levels. I did time this for 6 seconds, so I've got a bit of extra. This is a fairly bland slide which shows the population growth of London. I think we're going to hit 10 million people by 2030. So all these pressures are basically leading to pressure on the roads. All the population leads to more freight needed, all the passenger cars, everything. I know it's not sexy, but it's actually true. This is the Camden Plan. So I work for London Borough of Camden. Camden Plan is 2 of the measures we're supporting by doing our freight consolidation scheme, is sustainable neighbourhoods and supporting businesses and residents. So we want businesses to be able to do business well, and our residents of Camden, which this building's in, to enjoy living in the borough. We listened to our staff, so we did a staff survey, and they shouted very loudly that 87% said they wanted less deliveries at their buildings. Is it me or the mic? I'm not sure. So this is our consolidation centre. So it's not an idea, ladies and gentlemen. We've been running this since January 2014. Consolidation centre means that suppliers don't deliver direct to our buildings. They deliver to the hub, which is in Edmonton, North London, using Using low or zero emission vehicles, we then deliver to our council buildings, 250 in Camden, Islington and Enfield so far. And this is what we want to get away from. Again, not sexy, sorry about that. This is what's called an empty vehicle. So if we take the average utilisation of a freight vehicle in the UK is 60%. So if we take all those vehicles, we can turn them into full vehicles like we're using, which means that all the freight gets delivered, but on less vehicles. vehicles. That means there's more space for pedestrians, cyclists, and other road users. It's good to have a bit of a break during this. Speed dating for presentations. Here are some examples of some of the products that we can consolidate. So I'll let you look at the pictures, but it's almost anything except for something like petrol, which has to come in a big tanker, or things like petrol, water. So this is what a consolidated delivery looks like. This is in Camden's fantastic new building at 5 Pancras Square. That's 11 different orders from different suppliers and couriers turning into one delivery for the end user, and that's really good for the environment, socio-economic benefits, efficiency. That's the way freight should be delivered to make London streets quieter. Now, personal deliveries, if any of you have personal deliveries at work, you won't like this slide. Sorry about that. Basically, we said to Camden staff, so we all work agilely, which means we can work from home. And so we said, well, your personal deliveries, can you arrange them on the day you're working from home rather than having them come to work? And that reduced the number of courier deliveries by 150 a month to Camden's Town Hall, those of you that know it. Here are some of our partners, and there are some, very importantly, people from Transport for London, GLA, who have been a funding partner, and here are some of our other boroughs that have been involved. This is our catchment area, so we have, as mentioned, Camden, Islington, and Enfield. We want to fill in the middle. We'd like, if anyone here is from Hackney, please contact your councillors and say you want to join this scheme. The same as City, Westminster, and Haringey. So we're looking for not just other councils, but also businesses. Fitzrovia Partnership is a business improvement district that operates here. We've got hospitals, University of London. This is where our new building is based in St Pancras Square, and lots of retailers and businesses. So if you work for any of these businesses or architects, whoever, please come and join. So the West End project, some of you have heard about, no doubt, is a fantastic programme that's due to start this year to completely transform Tottenham Court Road in the local area. But what's really important, that green icon is our Freight Consolidation Centre, and that clock stands for retiming freight. So there's going to be less space and time for freight vehicles to park and to unload their goods. So by joining our scheme, we can help them, and that provides a solution. And very quickly, here are some of the other schemes that our transport strategy team in Camden are undertaking. Again, sponsored by the TfL, is improving cycle. This is Tavistock Place. So there's been got lots of stats around this, but not very much time to tell you about them. So that's the previous one was about construction vehicles and vulnerable road users. Oh, stop now for a minute. Are you sure they're all timed the same amount? This is our new building. So this is one, BREEAM. So if any architects are here, this is one, the Prime Minister's Public Building of the Year for last year. But for me, it's not just about having a building design that's sustainable using all the best products. It's about the delivery and servicing of it. So Camden's also moved away from some of those things on the right-hand side which weren't good. So it's about good ordering, not over-ordering, all that kind of thing. And very finally, Camden has been nominated for shortlisted for 5 prestigious Transport for London awards, including for the Freight Consolidation Scheme and also for Cycle Safety and Transport Borough of the Year. So Camden Borough, if anyone lives, works or visits Camden, which you are now by being in this building, then Camden has been nominated for those 5 awards. So fingers crossed, wish us luck. Thank you for listening. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, very much. Sometimes the best ideas are incredibly simple and obvious. Of course we need to consolidate freight, and it's wonderful that Camden are leading the way and helping us to do that. Sophie Thompson, Director at LDA Design, is going to talk to us next about Holborn area, staying in the Borough of Camden. Sophie, where is Sophie? Oh, there you are. I can't see the bright lights. Thanks, Esther.
Hi. Thanks everyone for coming tonight and listening to these talks. We've been really privileged over the last 2 years to be working with Camden Council on some of the most ambitious public realm projects in central London. Euston Road, Brunswick Square, Holborn, Seven Dials, King's Cross, Farringdon. Huge change triggered by intensification of the city, air pollution, cycle and walking safety, some of the things that Nigel touched on. Today I'm going to talk about Holborn, a 48-hectare area that we've been working on, looking at major transformation of the area. Lincoln's Inn Field to the south, Great Ormond Street to the north, British Museum. Key objective to improve the quality of life for Londoners here in terms of cycling and walking. We carried out rigorous analysis of the area, townscape, land use, movement, you name it, we looked at it. And actually, I think what's really interesting is actually how you go about looking at huge areas like this and the complexity of city, the dialect of the place, and actually a one-size-fits-all strategy doesn't fit. Seen very familiar to a lot of us outside Holborn Tube. 100,000 people using this tube every day, and it's congested, it's chaotic, it's cluttered, it's pretty stressful actually, and not to say dangerous as well. So car is king here as well, and hopefully some of the things that Nigel's been talking about is going to help reduce this. And when we consulted on this project and talked to the local community, they said they felt like there was a motorway running through the area, and often that motorway was in a permanent traffic jam. And look at it against the Grade 1 listed Rosemont Hotel. So we looked at pedestrian comfort. So some of you might be aware of the pedestrian comfort analysis, TfL. On the left, the existing cross-section through the road. And to summarise, in peak, there's 21 to 23 people per minute per metre walking through that area, through about 2.5 typically metres. We need to basically have about 6 metres to help that. Oops, we're on the next slide. This is New Turnstile Passage. It's pretty sorry. This is a key connection between High Holborn and Lincoln's Inn Fields. And just look at it. And how can we improve getting congestion away from those busy areas if we don't start to sort of address some of these? This looks at pedestrian connectivity, and we looked at areas where, you know, a sort of caricature of where links are weak, which is in orange. So where there's inactive facades, where the environment is poor, where it's cluttered, where it looks like it's a dead end, but actually you can get through. And actually, look, this is why there's so many problems with congestion. These 8 sort of images here talk about the vision. We developed a clear vision for the area, working with Camden, that sort of developed 8 themes to do with identity, cycle safety, pedestrian is king, what are the role and function of streets and open spaces in the area. And then we worked with traffic modellers at AECOM, with Project Centre, with Robert Bevan, historical consultant, and major changes. Let's remove the gyratory, let's get rid of it, let's have two-way, let's have a new London Underground entrance on Proctor Street, buses and cycles only for Bloomsbury Way, let's close streets. And here are some of the ideas for change. I think this was the day I was actually off sick, so a colleague had to go up in the cherry picker to take this photograph over the junction. You can see how wide it is, how difficult it is to cross here. It's 2-stage, and it's quite basic in terms of, well, actually, let's get rid of a lane on High Holborn. Let's introduce a new diagonal crossing. Let's model that. Let's widen the pavements, move kiosks, and actually just help people get, come out of the station and orientate, go to work, go to the British Museum. So, we've been looking at a number of kind of long-term aspirations for the area. Great Russell Street, so you can see the British Museum to the left. And this is principally a corridor for movement at the moment. The British Museum, the UK's #1 attraction, 7 million visitors a year. And actually, can this work harder for the area? Can this become a new museum quarter, which helps support local businesses? Can the road be closed to through traffic and actually create more of a social space and actually carve out more spaces for people and reassign the uses to actually improve quality of life and actually help sort of, movement and, and enjoyment. We also looked at options for Red Line Square. This is at the heart of Holborn. You can see the old Central St Martin's site in the distance. And this is, the business community really feel that this is a really cherished asset for the area in terms of its green resource, but actually it's quite overshaded, it's very seasonal, the public realm is really poor quality. So we work with them about new models for open space that actually have lots of different functions. So urban games, outside offices, fountain play, extra seating, let's get rid of some of the trees, let some light in, let's have it outward looking as well as inward looking, and just looking at how some of these spaces can start to work harder for us. Kingsway by Sicilian Avenue, so it has almost like a Parisian style feel, the kind of stately London plane trees, and Sicilian Avenue is London's first pavement cafe, hugely important area, and actually if you start to look at movement with Red Line Square, you can set up some really key important pedestrian connections. So again, let's look at closing this and actually moving traffic just to the east side. Let's have London's longest dining table here to give somewhere people actually to sit and have their lunch, create a better setting for Sicilian Avenue, encourage people to travel through there. So lots of different ideas, lots of potential. And lastly, Theobald's Road. This is a typical view on Theobald's Road. It's lacks character, lacks richness. It's a huge cross-section to get across the street. It's really wide. And this is, part of the new cycle grid. It's one of the new east-west quiet ways, providing a really important connection. So let's look at, making that cycleway work harder for us, introducing, meadows, some of the lessons LDA have learnt on the Olympics with pictorial medals, low-maintenance models. And just to conclude, these projects are all, they show major transformation in Holborn, major change, and actually, if London is going to compete with the likes of Barcelona or Copenhagen for walking and open space, then the next challenge really is we've all got lots of ideas, is actually how we go about actually delivering some of these projects and committing to the funding.
A capital idea to use good design, inspiration, creativity to make a place work better and make a bit more balance between the needs of the vehicles and people on foot and cycle. Sounds like a good idea to me. Will Sandy, Creative Director of the Edible Bus Stop. Come and tell us about the Edible Bus route.
Hello. Can I come up a little bit? Is that better? So I'm the Creative Director of the Edible Bus Stop. And the next slide's going to give you a little bit of an introduction about what we do. So we're an urban design collective who promote food growing in our urban environments, whether that's on a permanent or temporary kind of standing. Some nice, colourful examples of what we do. So we think it should be a growing trend. Utilising social media ideas to get projects out to a wider audience, and in turn opening discussions about well-documented topics such as healthy lifestyles, green infrastructure, good design, food provenance and seasonality. We want to literally grow the network. There are 19,000 plus bus stops in London, and if you imagine just 1,000 of those were transformed, that's close to 33 new green spaces in every 31 of 33 boroughs of London. Utilising the existing infrastructure is a simple way of connecting people to each space and in turn the neighbourhood. So we want to set a precedent with the 322 bus route, linking communities and spaces, utilising the existing routes and networking local skills and resources and strengthen the identity of the route and each community along it. Quite literally joining the dots. Creating London's original low line, a new green corridor for Londoners. Each garden is unique to the needs of the neighbourhood. As you can see, these are the three test beds that we've been working on, where each community has a sense of ownership from design through to delivery, connecting communities with each other and where their food comes from. They're open 24 hours and firmly in the public eye. There's no fences saying no, there's no signs saying no either. It provides a platform to discuss the potential. I guess it's green infrastructure at a grassroots level. There's an abundance of these odd ad hoc spaces across the city waiting to be transformed, but people can't either vision them or see them And so through what we do, we provide these kind of platforms for conversation that show the potential, and then once the people see the potential, they can't stop coming up with ideas, and everybody loves it. It's quite that simple. It engenders pride and creates excitement about their neighbourhood that they didn't see as they walk past to work every day. They provide active places gardened by the locals who have a vested interest in their survival, which I guess differentiates it from the conventional park, which has a kind of top-down local government kind of maintenance plan. So we all eat, and that's become the process that we adopt in each project. We engage neighbourhoods, or as it's become, we get engaged. As the project's grown, we animate the neglected spaces and then transform through creative design to meet what they want to see and create a local landmark. These are 3 case studies that we've got on London's first edible bus route in Stockwell, West Norwood and Crystal Palace. And this is the beginning of the engagement stage. So on the first one, we had 40 people come out. This one was run by Transition Town's Crystal Palace, and it became quite exciting just to get people out on the streets, and people were witnessing these transformations. The animation is, again, very simply done, getting seeds into the ground just to show people a visible kind of transformation that then engages more people in what we're doing. Everybody can relate to an edible. You have more of a kind of vested interest over a tomato plant than you do over a rose bush, because it's something to look forward to. Okay, you've got the beautiful flowers, but tomatoes taste much better in my opinion. We then raise the profile through design, transforming them, creating local landmarks, and coinciding the works as part of wider highways and public realms works. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. We could utilise the local environment. So the first one we had curbstones that were taken up from local roadworks. This one we spoke to local people and they said the bollards were the key thing. So we put them in the scheme with large concrete planters and benches that look like a big game of hoopla. It doesn't mean they have to be done in spaces that aren't nice. I mean, this is the Olympic Park, and we work with them to give a local identity to that because there were a lot of new tenants. So we created an edible postcode that they could literally pick herbs and vegetables on the way home. Yeah, an edible postcode, it's new. It's been adopted by a variety of users. This one's become the local school bus stop. Another one's got a core group of keen gardeners. The one in Crystal Palace is part of a much wider patchwork farm. Local young couples come out and use it as their back gardens. It's amazing, even if it's just people passing by. Celebration is key to what we do. It means that people can be proud of their achievements and their involvement, but also a PR and marketing opportunity for those who have supported in volunteers in corporate ways. And it enables us to fill the gap of the ever-shrinking public maintenance budget. Legacy. We engage them from the start so they have an invested interest and care for the project's longevity. And we're exploring ideas of integrating affordable business units within the growing space where each space has an active custodian to maintain the space. We look at the ideas of show rather than tell. Let's just put it out there and get people talking about it. This was International Parking Day. We transformed 5 bays in Waterloo. And we've been developing a series of test beds that provide instant green space and a platform to showcase what can be achieved before permanent works and investment. This was a little bit more fun. This was our response to the riots of 2011 and the ideas behind that a brutal landscape makes for a brutal outlook. And so we took a street, we rioted it, and created a conversation point about the benefits of green over grey. And quite literally, we've started to grow the network. We've worked with bus routes, but we think it's much bigger than that. We're working on ideas about greening the underground, and we think that it could be taken to train stations, motorways, any kind of infrastructure to kind of keep growing.
Thank you very much. And of course, we do also have the London in Bloom, the Stations in Bloom system as well, which is similar, I suppose. But it seems to me that the capital idea that's coming forward is about not sitting back and saying, oh, the way we've been doing it all the time is fine, and to seeing opportunities in our ever-growing and ever-changing city to make places a little bit better, use inspiration, use courage to do that.